welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stores for the weekend of November 19th, 2016. Trump's industrialization versus financialization and a U.S. Treasury default. Trump's economic nationalism, infrastructure, reindustrialization, military spending, preservation of Social Security, and part of Obamacare, all coupled with a tax cut. Now, I have been following Donald Trump's transition period and also what he has said on the campaign trail. And he has promised a tremendous amount of things, all in the name of economic nationalism, or just generally America first. He wants to rebuild the infrastructure, which costs money. He wants to reindustrialize and make sure that our industrial capacity remains in the United States and grows. He has said he wants to rebuild the U.S. military. He has said he wants to preserve Social Security. He has backpedaled a bit on Obamacare and realizes there's parts of Obamacare that he likes, like the pre-existing condition, keeping the children up to 26 years old on Obamacare, and probably finding a way to keep insured the 30 million people that became insured under Obamacare. And all during that, he wants to also make a tax cut for individuals and also for corporations. So how does that all get paid for when he has also said that he does not like the fact that the United States has a $19 trillion deficit without taking into account all these other unfunded liabilities like Social Security and Medicare? Well, one way you can pay for it is through enhanced economic growth. There is an economic theory that you can cut taxes, I think it's the Laffer Curve, and that because of increased economic activity, you will actually bring in more taxes as the economy grows. However, I don't think that's all he's thinking about. And I just want to throw something out there that Donald Trump himself threw out there during the campaign. He mentioned he was the king of debt. He has used debt to renegotiate debt when it is not favorable. And there's an old expression that when you owe the bank $100 or $1,000, you don't sleep well at night. But when you owe the bank $1 million, the bank doesn't sleep well at night. Well, the United States owes $4 or $5 trillion in Treasury obligations, both in the form of interest and principal, to foreign nations. And Donald Trump has said that that was a possibility, quickly backpedaled from that. But if you think about the rhetoric he's been saying, China's been ripping us off, Mexico will pay for the wall. Well, if he actually thinks China has been ripping us off, why would he want to pay the interest and the principal on the bonds that China owns? Why also, how is he going to get Mexico to pay for the wall? Well, Mexico owns about they own about $40 billion worth of U.S. treasuries. China owns about 1.1 trillion. So very simply, if Trump were to decide through his Treasury Department that the United States is only going to pay part of the principal on those bonds, he could free up trillions of dollars. Now, that would cause a dramatic impact on the bond market. However, and it would make the United States less able to access foreign bond markets, but as part of economic nationalism, he could simply resell bonds to American citizens, either through economic patriotism voluntarily or force them into retirement accounts and pension funds to buy the U.S. Treasury securities to help finance some of the projects that Trump wants to finance, and also the Fed could buy them. I mean, he was very clear that we have racked up a big deficit and have nothing to show for it. He criticized the wars where we didn't get the oil, and basically a lot of that money just went to the banks. Donald Trump is not a free market guy. So I could see him, I'm not predicting this, but I could see if he could get away with it, using debt and debt forgive or just basically debt renegotiation or absolving themselves of the debt and then funding everything, a foreign debt, and then funding everything through U.S. Funding to pay for what he wants in the United States. And basically, it's an easier sell to tell people, buy these bonds, and Americans to buy these bonds, or even to have the Fed monetize infrastructure bonds because it all helps the country. Whereas in his mind, all this debt that we've issued to foreigners has basically gone to nothing that's benefited the United States. It's only benefited the banks and the war machine. Now, that ties in also to the concept of industry versus financialization. Because in the past 8 years, the United States has lost many industrial jobs and is no longer the industrial powerhouse that it once was. It's only an industrial powerhouse in things like microchips for the national security type things, microchips and military aircraft. All of the small white good items and just general small light manufacturing is, for the most part, non-existent in the United States. Now, he wants to bring that back. And one of the things that's happened over the last 8 years is financialization of the economy, whereby profit doesn't seem to matter. And you have companies in the digital economy that, like the FANGs, the stocks, Netflix and Facebook and Zillow, all of these companies that one day are going to make a profit, but that doesn't seem to bother Wall Street because they get bid up higher and higher even though they don't make a profit. So the Wall Street benefits from a non-industrial economy because it can value its shares not on the basis of profits, but just on the basis of, because this is the speculative play, and really for no reason whatsoever. Now, in an industrial economy, and we're seeing this, what's happened in the past few weeks, the Dow Jones has gone up, but the NASDAQ has kind of fallen behind. And what's the Dow Jones called? The Dow Jones Industrial Index, right? So industry may become far more important under Trump, as well as profits, companies that make a profit. Right now, there's this Silicon Valley mafia that just pumps out these digital social media biotech companies, sells on the Wall Street, and they go soaring higher for years with no profit and no even expectation of profit. Now that's a fake economy. So I can see the stock market going down, but there being a renaissance in profitable companies, companies that actually make stuff under some type of Trump national plan. Anyway, just throwing that out there to see what your thoughts on how, if Trump will actually be this type of revolutionary president where he speaks of nationalism and actually does things that he believes are in the nation's interest, not necessarily in the interest of free markets, but in the interest of protecting U.S. industry, creating U.S. industry. Again, he's mentioned tariffs on goods coming into the country from U.S. companies that have gone abroad. So that's where I'm starting to think that Trump may be a lot. I think that when people are fearful that he is going to harm the rights of the lesbian, gay, minority communities, I don't think that's what the fear should be. If people are afraid of anything, it should be of a, depending on what your views on markets are, but your fear should be that Donald Trump does this top-down, heavy-handed economic policy that may change the United States standing in the world. Now, since Trump has been elected, gold and silver have been smashed, and the dollar is now at a 14-year high. Who would have expected that? But also, which is odd, at the time, the U.S. Treasuries are being dumped. So it looks like, and if Donald Trump were actually to repudiate the debt to foreigners, you would think maybe that would drive the dollar down, kill the dollar, but maybe not, because if the U.S. has less debt, then That's good for the dollar. I mean, what are the other countries? What's Mexico going to do if the United States says, sorry, we're not paying half your principal? That means the United States has less debt. And if they get away with it, that shows the strength of the United States. And that'll probably translate even to dollar strength. It would offset any weakness that may come about as a result of defaulting on the debt. Now, what's going to happen in December? The Fed's been talking rate hikes. I said last summer, the Fed would raise rates at the end of the year just once. They did. In December 2015, I said the Fed would talk all year about raising rates and only do it once. I think that's what's going to happen. And that times in well with the Fed will raise rates in December, quarter point, big deal. Markets will crash as Trump comes in, and then they'll leave Trump to deal with it. But I think Trump is less concerned about the stock market and more concerned because it represents a fake economy and more concerned about the real economy and putting forth his industrialization, his military spending. He's talked about putting money into the shipyards in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in Philadelphia. These are big government programs and they involve real work rather than digital abstractions. Trump has also named a new CIA director, a new attorney general. It'll be interesting to see what the CIA's priorities are. It seems that the CIA is involved in, or appears to be involved in, disseminating a certain narrative the last 16 years. I think that narrative is going to change. You may see a change in mainstream media support, mainstream media. In fact, the mainstream media may become almost alternative media during a Trump administration. They've started this whole war on fake news, and I'm not sure that's going very well because all that's happened is there's been a reaction by alternative media by they just call the mainstream media fake news. And interestingly enough, there's actually more, quote, fake news and probably more readers of fake news in the alternative media than there are in the mainstream media. So they're probably picking the wrong battle, especially when Trump gets in and you have this guy Bannon who runs Breitbart, which is used to run Breitbart, which has been labeled as fake media. You may see fake media as the ones who covered Donald Trump. Well, that's during the week, Donald Trump broke media protocol because he didn't tell the press corps where he was going. He was going to dinner. Well, that may be a sign of how he treats the mainstream media. He may give more interviews with news outlets like Breitbart or even InfoWars, and he may not include some of the mainstream media in his press conferences or in his briefings. So we'll see what happens, but there is a chance here that Donald Trump may truly be a much more different type of president than we can expect. And I think the whole fears of him on the social side are unfounded. The concept that's racist, bigot, sexist. I don't think he has any interest in pursuing policies that deal with those issues that may affect those communities. I think he's far more focused on these economic policies, which will impact people irrespective, positively or negatively, irrespective of the race, creed, or color. We'll see what happens. Okay, in other news, the U.S. Mint halted sales of American Silver Eagles. Now, they had seemed to have stopped making American Silver Eagles over the summer. And just to recap what's happened to American Silver Eagles, they had hit records the past 3 years, 2013, 14, and 15, selling 40, 42, and 47 million American Silver Eagles. And then this year, the U.S. Mint allowed authorized purchasers to buy as many Silver Eagles as they wished. And for the first 6 months, the authorized purchasers bought them. And I had suspected that the reason they did this was they did not want to have a shortage in 2016 like they had in 2015, which basically drove more sales because there isn't that much silver. If people become interested in silver, there's only about 850 million ounces of silver mined each year. And basically, silver doesn't have stockpiles like you have in gold. There's not much to recycle. Central banks don't hold it. So industry eats up half of the silver mining production each year, and it used to eat up 70%. And the reason it's half now is not because industrial production has gone down, it's because silver coin and bar sales have increased. That number can't increase much more because there's just not enough silver for people to be buying it for investment. That's why they like people to buy futures contracts, ETFs, mining shares to satisfy their silver fix. They don't want them buying the physical metal. And the US Mint is aware of this. And I think what they did was they front end loaded the authorized purchasers. And because there was no shortage this year, and also because we saw an uptick in a change in a preference towards gold at the US Mint, Canadian Mints, Perth Mints this year, that the silver sales remained, I wouldn't say suppressed. I mean, they're much higher than they were in 2006, 7, and 8 prior to the financial crisis, but they're lower than last year. It looks like they'll do about 37 million in sales of American Silver Eagles. And I think the upper limit that the US Mint wants to sell is about 40, no more than 50 million Silver Eagles a year. And I think they very cleverly front end loaded the authorized purchasers. They made buying silver not a something that had to happen right away. The premiums were down, and therefore the silver demand was left at a natural pace rather than a panic pace where there's any panic buying. Finally, India's war on cash gets messy. We reported on this when it first happened, that the Indian government had told its citizens, or the Prime Minister of India came out and on a televised interview said, by tomorrow night, your 500 and 1,000 rupee notes will no longer be legal tender, meaning you can't use them anymore. These 500 and 1,000 rupee notes are only worth $7 to $15 each. They represented about 85-90% of all the currency then being used in India, and all of a sudden that currency could not be used within 24 hours. And this is 80% of India's economy. The way people transact is by cash. So taking that out of there means that transactions come to a standstill. So people focused on what's going to happen to people who hold cash. Well, the prime minister was saying all you have to do is just deposit it in a bank and or exchange it for notes. Well, they didn't have enough notes to exchange, and a lot of people don't have bank accounts. Maybe in some rural areas 70-80% of the people don't have them. Maybe only 30-40% of people in India across the country even have banks. So they were ill prepared for this exchange, and they did it in this fashion, this 24-hour notice, because they wanted to catch out all the fraudsters. Well, by catching out all the fraudsters, they also made a criminal of everybody else. Or suspected criminal of everybody else. They thoroughly disrupted their economy. There's stories of people dying in line, waiting hours in the heat to get into the bank. There's stories of people killing themselves because they realize that they can't prove the cash that they have is been legally obtained, even if it had been. So it's a real disaster. And again, it's part of the government deciding that they want to stop corruption. So the way they're going to do it is in this very heavy-handed way. And they basically picked up millions of, I wouldn't say innocent Indians, but millions of just normal people who going about their lives. And the next thing you know, the government has disrupted their lives. And this is a country where maybe one in five people in the world live. So this is a dramatic change to their economy, to their lifestyle, and all just to catch out some corruption. And it's kind of like there's too many crashes on the roads, so we're just going to shut all the roads down. Okay, well now you don't have any more crashes, but now nobody can get where they're going. Well, it's the same thing with the cash. You eliminate it all, fine. For a while maybe there's no corruption because they can't transact. But what about all the other people who need to do honest and legitimate transactions, like buying food, paying their electric? I mean, it's just astounding that they would go to this link. We'll see. There's a link later that Bill Gates thinks this is a good idea. There'll be a little problem in the beginning. Yeah, a lot of people will die because of this stupid decision. They didn't print up enough rupees to give people because they didn't want them to have them anyway. So this was done in an extreme war on cash. And now they're saying they're going to go after people who try to buy gold, to turn in the rupees for gold. So this just shows that this was, India is not even in dire, desperate straits to have done this. So this is, I'm paying very close attention to this because this highlights what a government can do. They basically have created their money. They give it its value by legal tender laws. They could take it away, and that's exactly what they did. And it must be, from what I'm hearing, getting emails and comments on YouTube from people in India, it's a disaster. Now, some people defend it. Yes, sure, you can defend fighting corruption, but like this, I'm not quite sure. In any event, it brings us to, you got these banners here. If you're interested in buying gold or silver, Smaulgld gets a small commission. If you do so, you can compare prices and shipping on all the banners and all the links that we have on the site. Not a recommendation that you buy gold or silver, but if you're so inclined, you've done your research, that's what you want to do. You pay no more, no less if you buy through Smaulgld than if you visited these sites directly, so please check it out. All right, let's get to the rest of the program. Gold and silver closed last week at 1227. They closed at the end of this week 1207, down about $20, down 1.6%. Silver got hammered again. Last week it was 1736. It was already down from the 18s, and this week it closed on Friday at 1654, down almost another 5%. For you gold silver ratio people who insist that that ratio has to come down, not quite so sure about that. It's now at 73 to 1. Remember, gold, yes, doesn't rise as fast as silver in a bull market, but gold also doesn't drop as much as silver in a bear market. And gold is a larger market. It has only 10% industrial use versus silver's 50% industrial use. Gold is a much more stable metal, and for that reason, people are willing to pay that premium over silver. It's not just about how rare silver is compared to gold and how much above ground silver there is. And by the way, the other argument used to be that people were buying more silver on a relative basis than gold. That's not true anymore. In the past year, um, at least at the U.S. Mint, the Canadian Mint, the Perth Mint, and so on, that ratio has come down dramatically. 2 years ago, the U.S. Mint sold 100 times more ounces of silver than it did gold, and this year that's below 50. So people are moving more of their money towards gold than they are towards silver in the past few years. Again, doesn't bode well for thinking the gold silver ratio is going to go down to 20 or 16 to 1, or some people say 1 to 1. Chart of the week, Dow Jones Industrial versus spot gold. Look at that. You could see gold was doing pretty well. It was kind of beating the Dow Jones. Amazing though that this is this year. If you look at January, that the Dow Jones had that crash at the beginning of the year has now outperformed gold, even though there's the economy isn't doing that well. The earnings aren't that great. It's at all-time highs now, or very close to all-time highs, the Dow Jones. And the U.S. economy is nowhere near producing at levels that are all-time highs. In fact, as we go through quickly the rest of the program, you'll see that the economic data is still not very good, and the Fed is threatening interest rate hikes. Some stories, how gold could hit $2,000 under Trump. Okay, you can read that one. That's from the Motley Fool. Another story, gold could break 1,200 under inflation under Trump. You can make up stuff why gold is going up or down. Anyway, you can read those. Wall Street Journal, investors ditch gold after Trump win. Cites faith in economy under Trump. Okay, so we heard before the election how Trump was going to be a disaster for the economy. Markets supposedly say no. They're confident in Trump. Interesting story, trove of ancient gold and silver discovered at archaeological site. Click on that. You can see some nice pictures of some cool stuff that they found. I love the Indian press. They like to say, don't buy gold. Gold is, they're supporting this cash ban in India. Now they're saying brides don't want anything silver. Okay, I'm sure they don't. They don't want gold. They don't want silver. There's the Indian currency band update that I did early in the week. If you haven't seen it, you can check that out. Now, U.S. economic data, there was a good increase in retail sales that came out in October. Prices rose. The Empire Fed was slightly positive. So you're seeing this kind of semi-acceleration of the economy, but nothing dramatic. Wages are not going up. Unemployment, as they measure it, is very low. But again, it's not that they're not the type of jobs that give people stability. A lot of them are part-time, and they're not raising their standard of living in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we may be entering a period of stagflation, all subject to whatever intervention Trump may put into the economy. Because we've seen massive intervention the last 8 years in one direction. I think Trump is going to undo that intervention and put it in an entirely other direction. So whereas financialization and social media and internet type stocks went up, I think they're going to get crashed, and that the focus on all the government intervention money is going to go towards industrialization, infrastructure, stuff like that. Fed chatter. I think this Boston Fed president's talking about a rate hike, definitely in December. Now they've been saying all year, next meeting, definitely rate hike on the table, maybe even 2 rate hikes in a row. This time they probably mean it, because how many they bluffed on 7 meetings this year. They probably have to pull the trigger now in December. Egypt invites gold miners to explore for the first time since 2009. It's a nice little development there. Islamic investors can ignite the bull market. That's what people have been saying. I don't know if they view gold positively, always have. I'm not sure what's going to change, whether they're going to step up their buying. But then again, physical supply demand doesn't seem to impact the price of gold or silver. Those prices seem just to get set on the exchanges, and irrespective of supply and demand. U.S. Mint sales update. So far in November, the gold sales are very strong. You can go through those. You can check out the daily sales for American Gold Eagles, American Silver Eagles, American Gold Buffaloes, America the Beautiful Coins, and you can check them out at this blog post, for which I'll put a link at the bottom. Again, you can see the different links we have for you to purchase silver or gold. Remember, Smaulgld gets a commission if you do so. You pay no more, no less than if you were to visit the sites directly. And there's a lot of sites. We have affiliate agreements with more than a handful of gold and silver dealers, so you can pick the one you like and make your purchase that way. See, here's the thing. Industrial production, manufacturing production, still very lame. And again, I think that's an area where Trump will want to use the government and its resources and government programs to boost that industrial production. PPI was up 0.8%, so you're starting to see some decent inflation numbers getting towards the Fed's inflation target of 2%, or even passing it. Fed's Bullard, yeah, we're going to have a rate hike in December, but he's been saying for about 6 months we're going to do one, and we won't need to do one for another year and a half, 2 years. So maybe he's being consistent. But if you remember, Yellen said in 2014, when everybody's saying, when are you going to raise rates? When are you going to raise rates? And they never raised them. She said, it's not important when we raise rates, but the pace of, how quickly after we do the first one is important. The pace of rate hikes is more important than when they raise them. So they finally raised them at the end of December. Well, they might raise them at the end of this year. December last year they raised them. Maybe they raise them December this year. Well, that pace is not a gradual pace that they've been saying. That's a quarter point a year. So I guess we can expect one in December, and then another, maybe they'll wait, and then another one at the end of 2017. So anyone has any confidence in the Fed, it shouldn't be there. They've cried wolf for 2 years. They said 2 years ago, at the end of 2014, 6 to 8 rate hikes by the end of this year. They've got one done so far. More U.S. Mint sales updates, places to buy gold and silver, initial claims. These numbers are worthless. You can look at them, but I don't think they mean anything. I just put them there for informational purposes. Atlanta Fed says Q4. GDP is going to be 3.6%. Okay. And I think that's it for the week. Although we did have a very, very, very Big month, record month of gold acquisition for Russia in October. They added 1.3 million ounces to their reserves in October. There's a blog post. You can check out all the charts. You can check out a YouTube on it. Very interesting, because the reason I mentioned it's interesting is I did a blog post last month or 2 weeks ago saying that I had read a report that Russia was thinking of selling some of its gold. Well, and I said, let's see what happens in October. I didn't sell anything. They added a record amount. That's the most they've added. It ties a record set in 1999. India's war on cash. There's Bill Gates backing the rupee ban. Indian taxman may come calling on gold buyers. This is Bloomberg. This isn't me. People dying committing suicide due to this cash ban in India. There's a nice video there. You can watch that on that Bloomberg link right there. People dying committing suicide. And also gold premiums are hitting 2-year highs. So it does show that when people actually want gold, they will pay higher than the spot price, because indeed there is a shortage. And I think now I can honestly say, or not honestly, but with authority, that we are done for the week. Thank you very much. Reminder to subscribe to smaulgld.com. It's free. Fill in your email address there. Follow us on Twitter and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Oh, we're over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you very much.